Right now, you are being watched. You know that is not true. You are alone. The room is quiet. No one is here, and yet, somewhere underneath that rational thought, something in you is not entirely sure. That feeling has a name, and the reason you have it is far stranger than you think. It does not come from paranoia. It does not come from anxiety. It comes from a system inside your brain that is hundreds of thousands of years old, a system that was never designed for the world you live in now, a system that was designed for a world where being wrong about this question could get you killed. Your brain is not broken. It is just running very old software. Here is where it starts. Somewhere around 200,000 years ago, your ancestors lived in open environments. Grasslands, sparse forests, wide, flat terrain where the horizon stretched far in every direction. There were no walls. There were no doors. There was no concept of a private room. There was only the world, open and visible, and everything in that world that could either eat you or be eaten. In that environment, attention was survival. Noticing a predator before it noticed you was the difference between living and not living. And the ones who were slightly too relaxed, the ones whose brains did not generate that low hum of ambient alertness, did not pass their genes on. They became a meal. You are descended entirely from the ones who felt watched. Think about what that means. For hundreds of thousands of years, natural selection filtered your ancestors down to only the most vigilant, only the ones whose nervous systems defaulted to suspicion, only the ones who looked up when nothing moved and still felt uneasy. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system working exactly as it was designed. The psychologist Michael Graziano at Princeton University has spent years studying what he calls the attention schema, a model the brain builds of its own awareness. One of his most striking findings is that your brain does not just track where your attention goes, it also constantly models where other eyes might be. It is always running a background simulation of who or what might be looking at you. Not because you are anxious, because your ancestors who stopped running that simulation did not survive. Now, consider what happens when that ancient system collides with a modern room. You are sitting alone. The light is dim. There is a window behind you. There is a dark hallway to your left. There is a closet door that is halfway open. None of these things are dangerous, but your brain does not know that with certainty. Your brain is designed to treat uncertainty as a threat. The open closet is not a guarantee of safety. The dark hallway is not proven empty. The window behind you is a blind spot. And your ancient brain, the one that kept your ancestors alive for 200,000 years, does exactly what it was built to do. It flags the uncertainty. It generates that crawling sensation at the back of your neck. It makes you want to check. Psychologists call this hypervigilant threat detection, and researchers have spent decades documenting how universal it is. Arne Öhman at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden ran a series of landmark studies in the 1990s and early 2000s showing that humans detect threatening stimuli, particularly eyes and faces, far faster than neutral objects, even when those stimuli are presented too briefly for conscious recognition. Your brain sees a watching face before you know you have seen it. This is not metaphor. This is measurable biology. Your amygdala, the small almond-shaped structure buried in the center of your brain, activates in response to eyes. Not always consciously, not always in a way you notice, but it fires. It registers. It says, something is looking, and then it starts preparing your body for the possibility that you need to respond. That preparation is what you feel. The vague discomfort, the urge to glance over your shoulder, the sense that the space behind you is somehow not entirely safe. The researcher Rupert Sheldrake, a biologist working independently of mainstream academia, spent years collecting survey data on what he called the sense of being stared at. His methodology was controversial, but his findings were consistent. The overwhelming majority of people across cultures report having experienced this sensation. They felt eyes on them. They turned. Someone was looking. His critics argued the effect was confirmation bias. His supporters argued the effect was too consistent across too many cultures to dismiss entirely. What both sides missed is the more interesting question. Why does the sensation exist at all? Whether or not you can actually detect a stare, the feeling of being watched is real. Your body responds to it. Your heart rate shifts. Your posture changes. You become more self conscious, more careful, more controlled. Social psychologists have documented this effect extensively. In one striking study, simply placing a photograph of a pair of eyes in a room caused people to behave more honestly and cooperate more readily, even though they knew the photograph was not real eyes. Even a representation of watching changes your behavior. Your brain does not require proof of surveillance to respond to the idea of it. And this is where it gets genuinely strange, because you are not just doing this in dark rooms and empty hallways, you are doing this constantly. Every time you walk into a crowded space and immediately scan for faces that are looking at you. Every time you post something publicly and feel the phantom weight of other people's judgment before a single person has seen it. Every time you rehearse a conversation in your head because some part of you is already performing for an imagined audience. You are always performing because your brain is always modeling watchers. The evolutionary psychologists Leda Cosmides and John Tooby at the University of California, Santa Barbara have argued that the human mind is not a general-purpose reasoning machine. It is a collection of specialized circuits, each one built to solve a specific problem that your ancestors faced repeatedly. One of those circuits is dedicated to tracking social attention. Who is watching you? Who matters in the social group? Whose opinion affects your standing? In a small ancestral group of 50 to 150 people, that circuit was essential. Reputation was survival. Being seen as trustworthy, capable, and cooperative determined whether you got food when food was scarce, whether others helped your children, whether you survived illness by being cared for rather than abandoned. The eyes of your community were not an abstraction. They were a concrete force that shaped your life. Now that circuit is running in a world of 8 billion people, none of whom you will ever meet, many of whom have indirect access to your image, your words, your choices. And it has absolutely no idea how to calibrate. So it defaults to maximum sensitivity. It treats every potential watcher as relevant. It generates the feeling that you are always being evaluated, always being seen, always being judged. That is not vanity. That is not ego. That is the consequence of an ancient system designed for a village trying to navigate an internet. The sensation of being watched when you are alone is just one edge of this. It is the system doing its most primitive job, scanning the environment for unseen eyes, warning you that something might be there, keeping you from the fatal mistake of assuming the world is safe. And here is the part that no one tells you. The system is correct more often than it seems. Not because there is a predator in your closet, but because in the modern world, something is almost always watching. A camera in the corner of a store, a phone on the table that someone else can see, a social platform that remembers everything you have ever typed. The sensation your brain generates has found new things to detect, even if it cannot name them. Your ancestors felt watched because they were. And now, in a completely different way, so are you. The next time that feeling arrives, that low, crawling certainty that something is looking, you do not have to fight it. You do not have to call it irrational. You can recognize it for what it is. A message from 200,000 years of survival, sent forward in time, arriving in your body right now. A reminder that you are the product of every human being who took the feeling seriously, who looked up, who checked, who survived. You feel watched even when you are alone because the ones who did not feel it are not here to feel anything at all. And right now, sitting in your quiet room, that ancient circuit is still doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is keeping you alive in a world that no longer requires it. And somehow, in the strangest possible way, that feels like the loneliest and most human thing there is.